Welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free, formerly Wannabe Minimalist, the podcast for busy families who are tired of the chaos, fed up with being overwhelmed, and ready to enjoy life again. Each week, we talk about how to let go of the clutter so that you can focus on the things that actually matter. And it's not just physical clutter, we talk about the mental and emotional stuff too, because if it's holding you back, it's time to ditch it. I share what I've done in my own life to declutter, organize, and calm the chaos, but you won't just hear it from me. There are amazing guests too. It's practical, doable, and simple for those of us that want to be clutter-free. As winter rolls in, so do the challenges of cold air and dry indoor environments. If you're like me, you know how tough this season can be on our health, from stuffy noses to itchy skin. But I found a trusted solution that has been making winters more bearable for 125 years. Vicks humidifiers. With the air getting drier and humidity levels dropping below 40%, it's no wonder we suffer from congestion and dryness. Thankfully, Vicks offers the only humidifier with a 1-2-3 combination. It combines a cough suppressant, soothing menthol vapors, and a hydrating mist that not only eases the cough and congestion, but also brings much needed moisture back into our living spaces. There's something instantly comforting about the scent of Vicks Vapo. It takes me back to being cared for as a kiddo myself. I was initially hesitant about using a humidifier, but this one is effortless to maintain. It's easy to use and clean, making it a non-invasive solution that fits seamlessly into our daily lives. And here's some great news. You can find the Vicks Cool Relief along with Vapo Steam and a variety of Vapo Pads on Amazon. There's a special offer on Amazon on the Vicks Cool Relief Humidifier where you can get 20% off your purchase. Just go to Amazon.com and search Vicks VUL 600 Cool Relief Humidifier. It has a blue tank with white in the center. Be sure to click the coupon to get that discount. You need this for wintertime comfort. Well, hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 242 of the Wannabe Clutter Free podcast. On today's episode, I am speaking with one of the founding fathers of modern minimalism, Joshua Becker. And honestly, if you have ever picked up a book or been recommended a book about minimalism, it's probably been one of Joshua's. Even this past week in the speaker panel for the Q&A at the Chaos to Calm Summit, one of our speakers recommended 2 of his books. So I was pretty pumped up about this conversation. So we talk about his journey to less. We get into why stuff is not the answer or the reward that we think it is. And I ask him questions that felt pretty personal, and I appreciate that he actually answered them. So if you've been on the fence about letting something go or some things go in your life, I think this conversation will be just what you need to hear. But before we jump into it, I want to say thank you to you for joining me and spending some time with me today. If you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to click that subscribe or follow button so that you don't miss any of the amazing conversations I have planned for the coming year. And as always, thank you so much for being part of this community. If there's something you want me to cover, or if you have a question about decluttering, organizing, or living a better life with less, well, connect with me on Instagram at Wannabe Clutter Free or join our private Facebook community, the Wannabe Minimalist Family Group. And one last little bit, you can get the show notes for today by going to wannabeclutterfree.com/242. Again, that's wannabeclutterfree.com/242. All right, let's dive into it. Well, hi, Joshua. Welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free. How you doing today?
Oh, I am wonderful. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited. You're kind of one of the pioneers. Is that the word I'm looking for? Kind of in the space. So this is going to be a really fun conversation. Thanks for joining us. But for those that, for some reason, haven't heard of you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I have been married to my wife, Kim, for 25 and a half years. We just celebrated 25 years last summer. I have 2 kids. My son, Salem, is 21, and my daughter, Alexa, is 18, about to be 19. So they're both in college. I live just outside Phoenix, Arizona, in Peoria. I was a pastor for 15 years, but 16 years ago, I was introduced to minimalism. I started a blog just journaling our journey called Becoming Minimalist, and it took off and grew. And so for the last 13 years, 12 years, I've been writing and speaking full time, trying to convince people to own less and live more.
I love it. Well, and your story starts with like you were cleaning out your garage one day, right? And you kind of realized that you were spending all this time managing the stuff and not actually living that life. So take us back to what was it like before? Like, what did life feel like before you started to let go of the stuff? And then what first surprised you about the impact of minimalism as you started to get into this lifestyle?
I have always lived pretty squarely in the middle class. So never having to miss any meals growing up, but never eating at the nicest restaurants either. When my wife and I got married, again, I was a youth pastor, so wasn't making a lot of money, but we had three three pretty significant pay increases over the first 10 years of our marriage. And every time it seemed like we were going to be able to get ahead financially. We had lived on what we were making, and then I got a bump up, and it seemed like the bump up should just end up in savings, but it never did. It was always on the edge and always getting by paycheck to paycheck. So the best way for me probably to explain how my life looked is pretty just middle class. Money was going to the mortgage, and we moved a couple times. It got a little bigger house as our family grew, each larger home, got more furniture and got more stuff inside of it, more people entering our family, 2 kids, more stuff. And it just, I never made the connection, I think, that all the money that was going towards buying stuff that I didn't need because it just felt normal. It felt like what everyone else was doing and living like. And so I never have a super exciting answer to how did your life look? It was just pretty typical middle class. We had a 4-bedroom home and 4 of us, and everything was filled with stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's helpful for the audience, right? Because I think they are like, oh, well, that feels like where I am, right? It feels like I'm subsisting, like things are okay, but they're not great. Or I feel like things should be better. Yeah, we got a raise last year, but it's not really feeling like I have any more breathing room. Like this is a very typical, normal feeling that I think a lot of people have. I also want to talk about that moment of money and stuff because I think some people look at minimalism and think there's either two sides of the spectrum, right? It's either I'm a minimalist because I'm really frugal and I don't have any money and I have to live with a little bit of stuff, but that feels like a punishment almost. Like I don't have stuff because I can't have stuff. Or the other side, which is I can only be a minimalist if I'm rich because I don't have to worry. If I need something, I can go out and buy whatever I want, or I buy the best of the things and only have the tippy top best of everything. And so I think you and I both fall in this middle ground where it's like, no, we're choosing to have less because it gives you freedom. So, what are your arguments or thoughts when people say you can only be a minimalist if you have a lot of money because you're letting go of your stuff? But what if I need that stuff? I might need to come back to that stuff and I can't afford to go out and buy it again.
Yeah, the way I explain it is, I can't really draw a graph here, but if you could picture it, if you have very little money and very little stuff, then you don't need to embrace a minimalist life because you are already living on the minimal amount of things that you would need. And I put very few Americans in this. Like when I think of that, I mean, I've been into a lot of developing nations and like people genuinely living in poverty and don't have anything.
Right.
And there's still a part of minimalism that I think there's a part of the minimalist message that I think is still important for them to think about and consider. You can have nothing, but if you think you're not going to be happy until you own as much stuff as what you see on TV, then I think that's a difficult spot to be in. But anyway, So no money, no stuff. Then you have the other end of the spectrum where you have tons of money and tons of stuff. But if you have tons of money and tons of stuff, then usually you're paying someone else to take care of your stuff.
Mhm.
And so even there, like the impact of minimalism isn't as well felt because you've got all the money in the world. So who cares how much stuff you have? You're not dealing with it anyway. Most of us live in this middle ground where our financial resources are finite, but we keep adding more and more stuff. And for that person, which is me, and I assume you, and I assume most of the people listening, this is the person that minimalism pays the biggest benefits for, results in the biggest life change, prevents the most opportunity, because the more stuff we have, the more time it takes, the more money it takes from us, and reducing the number of possessions frees us up to direct our lives towards things that are more important and more beneficial and bring more happiness and more joy in the long run. So that's usually how I think about it and try to explain it.
Some things. I know that one was just one that came up as we were talking about that, and you saying that the lifestyle creep made me really think of that one, because I do think I've heard the pushback a lot of, well, of course you can get rid of things if you have enough money to be able to replace them. So I appreciate how you kind of broke both of those down. How about for you? Can I ask personally, like as you've had, I would say a lot of success in this field in helping other people. You have 5 best-selling books. I would assume that you're no longer having to live paycheck to paycheck or worry about the lifestyle creep. How has that affected you, and have you maintained the smaller house and those kinds of things? I'm curious. Sorry if that's a little personal. I'm not sure if people ask you that on a normal basis. It feels a little voyeuristic for me. I feel a little uncomfortable asking it, but I'm curious.
Yeah. No, I don't mind talking about it at all. So right away, as we began owning less and noticing, like our financial situation changed pretty dramatically right away. I am pretty convinced, just because it was my own story, that we don't even realize how much money we're spending on stuff we don't need, how much of our time and life and energy is being directed towards physical possessions. I think I saw a stat recently that the average American spends 2 hours a day on physical possessions, whether it's cleaning or organizing or shopping or returning or
Wow.
thinking about buying. Like that's a pretty significant amount of time. The USA Today did an article where they said the average American spends $1,500 a month on non-essentials, which everyone hears, and a lot of people like immediately argue, no, not me. I don't. Everything I have is what I need, but those are the numbers, and I think it applies for a lot of people. So right away, our financial situation changed. I became a full-time writer 12 years ago. At the time, I was making $2,000 a month online when we went into full-time writing. And I write about this in my book, Things That Matter. So I don't mind sharing that because I've shared this story other places. We found that we could live on $4,000 a month is what we needed to get by. Again, this was 12 years ago, so a bit of inflation and housing costs and a lot since then. But that's how much we needed. I was making $2,000. We had saved $18,000, and so I'm like, I got 9 months where I can try to figure out how this goes. We had moved into a smaller home. We had cut down all of our expenses, and so making the change was doable and was possible. And we made I probably made $5,000 a month that was always my goal for the first, I'd do the math, first 4 or 5 years of writing full time. And then I signed my first book deal to write The More of Less and The Minimalist Home. And we used the money from that to start a nonprofit. And so I guess the long story, the short version of the story is, yeah, we live in the same house that we bought 13 years ago. I guess My kids have vehicles now and my kids are in college now. And so some of those changes have taken place. But yeah, same home, same amount of stuff. Minimalism is still the way I want to live my life. And so a lot of our excess income goes to the nonprofit. I guess we get a little nicer vacations than when I was making $2,000 a month. But so we spend more money than we did, but not on physical possessions.
Yeah, love that. Well, and I think too, like those experiences are the things that really do enrich your life more than having a new bed or a nicer car. Although we did just buy a new car because our other car died, right? So, I mean, there are things like that. Your physical things are going to wear out and it's fine to replace them. But yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's really great. What would you say has been one of the biggest impacts that minimalism had on you that you really wish other people could understand? It's just one of those things that it's like you can't get it until you live it, but it's totally worth it on the other side.
Yeah, that's a good question. And what I want to say, I think fits. So like I write a lot about, hey, when we own less, it means we have more money, we have more time, we have more energy, more focus, less distraction. Like a lot of our resources come back to us, and people just don't. I think most people don't realize how much of a burden their possessions have become until they begin to remove them. Probably though, the more mature answer that I couldn't have answered right away, until I'd given this a lot of thought, until I'd written a lot about this and just kind of stumbled into this thinking. The thing that I want people to notice and think about is minimalism forces you to look for happiness in other places than physical possessions. And I think even in the accumulation of wealth and money, and maybe that's a separate conversation for a separate time. But what I noticed is as we started owning less, and as the goal of life didn't become, hey, I just want a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood, or I want all the money that I would need to buy those things. We started to start asking the question, like, okay, what are we going to spend our money on? Like, where are we going to look for happiness and joy and meaning and fulfillment? And what am I going to devote my life to if it's not accumulating a bunch of things and taking care of a bunch of things? And different people will answer that in different ways. And I don't always think the first place that we look for that answer is necessarily where we're going to find it, if that makes sense. Like, I'm going to own less stuff, but I'm just going to try to save as much money as I can. And then like, I don't know if that's making me as much happier as I thought, or I'm just going to do a bunch of traveling and it's really fun for a little while. And then I kind of like being home. So, but it forces those questions on us. And like I said, I don't know if we always get to the right answer the very first place we look, but I always think at least if we start looking elsewhere besides where society tells us to look for happiness, eventually we'll run into it somewhere. How's that? Is that good?
Did you know that while we spend about 90% of our time indoors, the air inside can actually be up to 100 times more polluted than the air outside? From allergens to smoke and even mold spores, our homes are full of unseen pollutants. But don't worry, I found the solution to help us breathe easier. Air Doctor. Air Doctor isn't just any air purifier. It's an award-winning system that eliminates 99.99% of airborne contaminants, ensuring that the air in your home is not only clean but healthy too. It's no wonder that Air Doctor was voted the best air purifier by Newsweek. And guess what? An overwhelming 98% of Air Doctor customers report that their home's air feels cleaner, safer, and healthier. So how does it do it? Well, it uses ultra HEPA filters that capture particles 100 times smaller than what standard HEPA filters can manage. That means it's incredibly effective at purifying the air from virtually all types of pollutants, including those invisible dangers that are too small to see but can still pose a big risk to our health. And there's more good news. Right now, you can get up to $300 off your purchase of an Air Doctor when you visit airdoctorpro.com and use the promo code WANNA. Plus, Air Doctor comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and a 3-year warranty. An $84 value, absolutely free. Don't miss out on this exclusive podcast-only offer. Head over to airdoctorpro.com, that's AIRDOCTORPRO.com, and use code WANNA to make your home's air cleaner, safer, and healthier. Are you feeling a bit overwhelmed by hormonal changes? Trust me, you are not alone. Every day, we're surrounded by over 1,000 hormone disruptors, from the food we eat to the products we use. These disruptors, along with natural body changes like perimenopause and menopause, can make us feel like we're on an emotional roller coaster. But what if I told you there's a way to smooth out the ride? That's where Hormone Harmony from Happy Mammoth comes in. This incredible formula harnesses the power of herbal adaptogens, nature's answer to helping our bodies cope with stress. Whether you're dealing with mood swings, sleeplessness, or those frustrating menopause symptoms like hot flashes and night sweats, Hormone Harmony is designed to help women of all ages feel balanced and more like themselves. It's not just a supplement, it's a lifestyle shift that's backed by science and loved by thousands. Happy Mammoth, the makers of Hormone Harmony, use only science-backed, plant-based ingredients that truly work. It's no wonder a bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds. The feedback has been astounding, with over 30,000 women sharing their stories of a life reclaimed, a life where they feel like themselves again. And now I've got great news for all of you looking to try Hormone Harmony for yourselves. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code WANNA at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code WANNA, WANNA, for 15% off today. I think so. Well, and as somebody who has traveled extensively, so we traveled for 6 months with our daughter when she was 1 around Europe. We traveled again for another over a year when she was 5. We had an opportunity there. And then we took a month this last summer back to Europe again with her. Now she was 11 at the time. Very interesting to see her in the 3 different age ranges, but also the fact that yes, it is fun. Anything you're not doing, I think right now, the grass is greener, right? You always get that moment of like, but maybe if I just did this other thing, or that would be so great, or that looks fantastic, especially with social media these days. You see everybody else doing these other things and you're like, oh, if I just had that, or I just did that, I would be better, happier, smarter, whatever, all the prettier, all the things, right? It really isn't out there, right? It is in figuring out what you said. The one thing I pulled from that was legacy, right? What is the legacy I want to leave behind? What do I want to be known for? What do I value, and how can I use the resources I have, which with less stuff will be more time, energy, money, all of those things. So what is it that I want people to remember me for? What do I want my kids to say about me when I'm gone? I think that's where you can start to find those pockets of happiness.
Yeah, I think that I don't know, we all kind of have a desire, I think, to make a difference in the world and to help people and serve people, and a person of faith. So certainly my faith plays a big part in that, and where I'm looking for joy and meaning and significance. And I was thinking about your traveling, and like, it's great to go on the trips, and it's great to be traveling. It's great to memories. And I don't want to like overspeak for you, but like, I would imagine that like the impact that you have with this podcast, like the opportunity that you have to help people and change people's lives, that brings a deeper and richer joy than just traveling Europe for the rest of your life. Like, I feel like it's really fun for a while, and then you're like, I don't know, I feel like I need to be contributing and helping others. And so like minimalism does that. I think it provides that opportunity, and suddenly work doesn't have to be, hey, I just want to make more money so I can buy more stuff, but work gets to be what I do out of love to help others. And so anyway.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you bringing that back around full circle. That was the point I was trying to make with that was, yes, the traveling was fun, but it's the getting to, yes, come home, use those experiences to tell people, to help people, right? If you want to travel, you don't have to have a bunch of money to do so. I'm not independently wealthy to get to go do these traveling experiences, or you don't have to take everything with you. We did it with carry-on, right? So I think I had 14 articles of clothing for a whole month, right? So to be able to tell people that, yes, you can do these, you can have these experiences. These are the things that are more important than having the stuff. And yes, being able to use those experiences to help others and teach others what is possible, because people don't think that's possible, or society doesn't tell us it's possible. But yes, absolutely. So thank you for bringing that back around, because I don't think I made that closed that loop there for everyone. So appreciate it. Yeah. Well, let's talk about relationships and social impact. How has minimalism impacted your relationships, both with I'm curious, when your friends started to find out that you were a minimalist, if that had any impact on your relationships, both with your friends and your family, either one.
Yeah, it is interesting because I get some people who will tell me that, I don't know, like it's really negatively impacted their relationships. And I've never felt that. I think that it sparked a lot of conversation. I think that my lifestyle has impacted some of my friends in significant ways, and I think my lifestyle has impacted others of my friends in no way whatsoever. I don't think that I ever had a set of friends where they felt threatened by the change that I was making, or that me not buying a certain brand of clothes or upholding a certain lifestyle meant that they didn't want to spend time with me anymore. I think I wrote a blog article one time where I just said, if you need nice things to impress your friends, then you have the wrong friends. And if the people that you have a relationship with don't want to spend time with you anymore because you're not buying the same stuff that you used to buy, then I don't know, maybe there's some, I don't know. I should I would wonder like how much my friends they really are. And then yeah, same thing with my family. I think that my family understood, and I don't think my pursuit of minimalism kind of ran against any of their values or worldview in any way. I think instead, what it did, or at least what I would hope that it did, is made me a better friend. I know it made me a better husband, and I know it made me a better father by just by being more intentional and having more time and a little less stress, and some more freedom to be the husband and father that I wanted to be. So certainly helped me in that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think it depends on how much people are entrenched in their lives, in their relationships. I'm 100% on board. I agree that, like, if your friends are judging you based on the clothing you're wearing, then maybe you should look at getting different friends, for sure. But I know it can be scary to tell people right away. I know I have personally found, like, if when people meet me and they find out what I do or the podcast that I have, they're a lot of the knee-jerk reaction is like, "Oh, well, I could never have you over to my house because it's a mess." And
Mm.
that's not what I see. So I'm curious, did you ever, I mean, from a woman's perspective, I get that a lot, but women also say silly things sometimes, like, "Oh, I hate her, she's so skinny," or whatever. Like, we use very strange language sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you ever find that in the dad circles?
No, I don't know if I hear it in the dads. I don't know if they really. I don't know if they care all that much. I mean, maybe. I guess
Yeah.
I've heard it, a few times about, oh, don't come in. And so maybe there are people that aren't inviting us over because of that, which I suppose would be a shame. I think that would be like an early assumption. I would
Yeah.
hope that the more we get to know each other and the more we become friends, the more that they realize that's not something that matters to me all that much. I think that just like anything else, minimalism could become a sense of pride, and could be a way that we want to judge others, make negative assumptions about others, and that would be wrong. That would be prideful, and I think that we all need humility. I think I can see that sometimes in conversations with spouses where one
Mhm.
person I got an email one time and she's like, hey, I've discovered minimalism and my husband wants nothing to do with it. And I don't know if she's joking or not, but she's like, do you think I should divorce him?
Oh,
And literally, the more I think, like this was years ago, and the more I think about it, I'm like, well, maybe it was just a joke. But I wrote back and I'm like, no, like minimalism shouldn't be tearing you apart. Like minimalism should be freeing up the space for you to come together. And if this is the work that you're doing, like if this is the personal development step that you're feeling called to make and you're bringing about in your life, then that's wonderful. But that doesn't mean that your spouse isn't growing and changing. It's just in something different and where you're feeling called to make a change. And hopefully you're just growing together and building each other up as opposed to letting it tear you apart. So
yeah.
I'll say that in case anyone needed to hear it.
Hey there, friend. Ever find yourself standing in front of your closet feeling like you have nothing to wear? Well, you're not alone. A recent study found that nearly 61% of Americans admitted to regularly struggling to find something to wear, even though their closet is full of clothes. And I've been there too. But thankfully, I found a great solution: Armoire. I went to a podcast conference recently, and honestly, it had been a while since I needed to dress up. But thanks to Armoire, I didn't just find outfits, I discovered styles that made me feel put together and confident. Their website was my boutique where I could choose from high quality, unique pieces, perfect for the occasion. And the best part, I didn't have to commit to buying them. I could wear them, love them, and send them right back. For someone like me who isn't a big fan of traditional shopping, Armoire was a lifesaver. This service is fantastic for anyone who wants to keep their wardrobe fresh and exciting without the clutter or waste. Plus, if you fall in love with the piece, you can buy it at a great price, which is what I did with my new jeans. So if you're looking to revolutionize the way you dress for any occasion, check out Armoire. Right now, my listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style/wanna. That's armoire.style, ARMOIRE.style/wanna, WANNA, to get up to 50% off your first month and never worry about what to wear again. Try Armoire today. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you want minimalism to be a point that brings you together, but what would you say when someone is saying, hey, but my spouse is resistant to decluttering, to letting things go? What are some of the conversation starters you recommend people have?
Well, the first thing I say is I think there's a big difference between married and not married, at least in my worldview. So if you're not married and there's this issue that is arising, then I think you have to ask yourself, is this someone that I want to live with for the rest of my life? But if you're married and you've made the commitment and you stood in front of family and friends and God, if that was a part of your, and you said, hey, I'm in, like we're in for better or worse and sickness and health, and like I'm committed to you, then this just becomes an issue that we need to learn and we need to figure out and we need to grow together. So I think we do that with, I always say, the right timing, the right words, and the right attitude. So the right timing means, hey, if you discovered minimalism just now, you've just discovered this great podcast, like you're in for decluttering. You don't start by getting rid of your spouse's stuff. Like you can focus on your own and lead by example for a while. I think we bring the right words. These conversations aren't when we're frustrated or we're mad or we can't find the umbrella or we got all dirty trying to park in the garage and we're just, why do you have all this stuff? Like that's not the right time to have the conversation. And the right words would also mean, what drew you to owning less might be different than what's going to draw them to owning less. If you're the one who takes care of most of the housework, then you can see. And if you're the one that spends most of the time in the house, then you're like, I just want to own less stuff so I can have some calm in here and can clean easier. But if they're not home or if they don't do a lot of the cleaning, then that's not going to draw them to it. But maybe they are really worried about money and you could help them see how owning less would appeal to that. And then lastly, just the right attitude. And by that, I mean humility. You're not perfect. in a relationship. It seems like we need to be reminded of that all the time. You're not perfect. There's something about you that your spouse wants you to change and you're not budging on. So keep that in mind. Love and patience, and I think casting a vision of, hey, this is what I think our family could be. This is what we could be spending money on. We could be spending time on. We both value these things more than physical possessions. And I'm just now putting together that if we own less, we can do more of that. And then, yeah, finding compromise when necessary.
All right. So common goals and common enemies about what do we want to save for, or what are we working toward together? So having kind of a commonalities that you're working toward together. And yeah, speaking in the other's language, which is sometimes hard because we do sometimes get our own blinders on. And absolutely, I am not perfect. I never claim to be, never will claim to be. Constant work in progress. And so, yeah.
And maybe and I always think focusing on the other person's strengths are also pretty helpful. Like maybe I'm the one who's going to drive this family towards decluttering or drive this family towards minimalism. And that's okay because my spouse is the spontaneous one, or the one that, I don't know, is great at planning parties and having people over. Like they're really good at something and they bring something to this relationship that I appreciate and makes us better. And so maybe I'm just going to be the one that always drives us in this direction. And so I think focusing on how we're all bringing different strengths, common enemies, common goals, and common, I don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, everybody has their different strengths, right? That absolutely makes sense. So I get that. Okay. What about now you have a whole book on minimalism with kids. So how did you now your kids were young when you started. What do you recommend for people where their kids are a little bit older, maybe a little bit more entrenched in their stuff and in this lifestyle, and now you're saying, "Hey, we're going to start living differently." What are some of your tips for kind of moving in that direction?
Yeah, I think my advice changes quite a bit based on the age of your kids
Yeah.
and when you're starting. So my kids were 6 and 2. And so pretty early on, like not from the very beginning, but pretty early on, like, hey, this is what our family does. And we got to we always get to set the culture of our family. And so this is what we spend our money on. This is why we don't spend our money on these things. So there's that aspect. The older they get, I mean, you just picture it. Like the older they get and you discover minimalism, like it's going to be a more difficult conversation when they're 16, 17, 18, and you've been living life one way and suddenly you're like, I just read this book and we're changing everything. And they're already at a stage of life where they're a little not predisposed to want your advice anyway. So I think still in that situation, we get to lead by example. So even if it's just 3 years left at home or just 1 year left at home, like they still get to see the change that we're making. We're explaining why we're making that change, and they have something to draw on when they get older and they're making their own decisions. I think there's a helpful conversation between shared spaces and personal spaces, especially when we're talking about teenagers. And so, hey, we're changing the way we function in this home. We're changing the way we live our lives. Your bedroom is your bedroom. And so keep whatever you want in your bedroom. But in the living room, this is what we're doing differently. In the kitchen, this is what we're doing differently. And so they can still, I think, follow the shared spaces, but have their own freedom in their own personal spaces is how I do it. For everyone in the middle ground, though, I'll mention physical boundaries, I think can be very helpful for kids of any age. Like you get to keep the clothes that you want as long as they fit in your closet. Like you get to keep the sporting equipment you want as long as it fits in this closet or this section. Little kids, you could have as many toys as you want as long as they fit in this toy bin or in this closet or against this wall. You get to keep whatever artwork you want as long as it fits in this bin that goes under your bed. And I think that empowers them to like make decisions about which toys am I going to keep and which clothes am I going to keep. But it also kind of just sets this idea of a physical boundary. And I think it's easier for them to see, okay, if I'm going to bring in a new toy, I got to get rid of another one. And I think that can be pretty helpful in almost any and
Yeah.
every physical possession.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think we as adults, like, this is our house. I can't keep anything that doesn't really fit in this house unless I have a storage unit, and let's not go there because that just is out of sight, out of mind. And then you completely forget you're having it and you're spending all this money on stuff that clearly doesn't matter much to you because you're not actually using it. So, yeah, very similar to how we have to function as adults. And I think that's so helpful for children to start to make those own decisions for themselves and not second guessing their decisions, which is very difficult, I
Mhm.
think, if you are new to decluttering yourself. I always tell parents that if they are helping their kids declutter and their kids are ready to get rid of something, if you wanna second guess it, just keep your mouth shut and it just becomes your thing. Like, if you're not ready for them to get rid of it, then it becomes your thing. Like,
Mhm.
they let go of it. So give them that ability to make those decisions and then learn from them if they need to. Let's make those
Yeah.
stakes low while they're still at home versus they're off to college and they're making these big life-changing decisions, and they've never had that moment to fail a little bit, actually.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a big fan of over-explaining. I think you should be able to explain, like, why do I have to declutter my
Yeah.
toys? And like, here's why. I think the more we've set that example, the more we've decluttered all of our own stuff before making the kids do their stuff, I think helps us kind of learn some of the answers to some of those questions. I always think like the more of our own things we declutter, the more it prepares our kids for like they know that eventually you're going to get to their toy room, but for them to see you go through your kitchen first,
Yeah.
go through your closet first, go through your garage first, like go through the laundry room, like they're like, hey, they're doing every room, and then they finally get to the toy room. I think they're little in a better spot to receive the news and be like, okay, it seems fair now that we would be going through my stuff.
Yeah, I like how you put that because I always say that we need to start with our own stuff. But I like how you said it gives them time to warm up to the idea. And also, the over explaining is something I do. And I just put two and two together right there that I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And I like that I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, and I think we learn things like how to do this and what are some questions to ask, and so we're better prepared for that. We've
Yeah.
gone through the same emotions that they're about to go through, and so I think it just prepares us in so many different ways.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so the topic of this talk was how owning less transforms more than your home. So, are there any other tips before we start to wrap it up that I didn't hit on that you're like, I really want to make sure that we talk about this point?
One of the things that surprised me about minimalism was the emotional journey that I was gonna go on, and not just I feel really sentimentally attached to these things. But early on, it wasn't just about getting rid of physical things, like, I soon ran into, like, I don't know what I want to keep or get rid of because I don't even know what want my life to be about. Like, what do I want to accomplish with my life? And it minimalism really forces, I think, questions of values on you, like what do I want to be and what do I want to accomplish? So what do I need to keep in order to do that? And what's just distracting me from that? And those are all great questions to ask. I think sometimes when we're decluttering and we run into something that we really struggle to get rid of, we just say, well, I guess I'm just going to keep it. And I think instead we should kind of sit in that question for a little while. And why is it so hard for me to get rid of clothes? Why is it so hard for me to get rid of all these toys from when my kids were young? Why is it hard for me to get rid of my husband who passed away, his clothes? Why have I held on to them for so many years? Like, I think those are good questions to ask, and we don't always like the answers that we find. But if it's an unhealthy reason, if it's something that we need to learn about ourselves, then it's always worth the effort. So I just say hard questions are good to ask and usually lead to the most life-changing truths. And so don't shy away from the hard questions that emerge. I think that you're right on the edge of learning brand new lessons about yourself.
That was so good. Yeah, because I think we can live in a world where we want the quick answers. We want the immediate satisfaction and gratification. And I've been told if I let go of my stuff, I'm going to have this moment of epiphany and growth. But we don't understand that those do come with those hard questions, right? Moving through these tough things, having these conversations, really looking and examining ourselves. Whew, it's the hard work, but that's what makes it worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Joshua, thank you. We've got 3 questions that I always ask people before we go. But before we do that, where can people find you?
Well, my home base online is becomingminimalist.com. So I would send everyone there to find anything I do.
Fantastic. Okay. So the number one question I always ask before we wrap up is, what does clutter-free mean to you?
Clutter-free to me means freedom. It means I have removed the distractions that keep me from the things that matter most in life. Physical possessions, but also, I think, schedules and habits and beliefs and lots of different things that I think can clutter and slow me down.
Love that. Love that. Streamlining, getting rid of the things that are the speed bumps in life. I like that. All right. Number 2, what is making you happy right now or in this season of your life?
My kids are both in college, and so far they are doing well on their own, and I will be most happy and relieved when they're stable and have a job, but seeing them move in that direction and working hard and being focused, that's what's bringing me happiness. That, and we celebrated 25 years last summer, so clearly I'm still pretty happy about that since I brought it up twice.
That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations on that. That's great. And then the final question, what is a goal you have for yourself this year?
I am in the middle of writing a book right now, and it's supposed to be done in a couple months. And so that is my first and foremost goal, is finishing the manuscript for a book that I'm writing, and I'll feel great when it's done.
Fantastic. Well, congrats on that as well. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, make sure you're checking out Joshua's website. And if you haven't read any of his books, please check them out as well. All right. Well, I love having conversations with people that appreciate and get minimalism, although I'm not 100% convinced Joshua totally understands how women talk to each other or get tangled up in the emotional side of how we feel reflected in and by our home environment. But that's okay, because that's what I'm here for. It's just another reminder, though, that we are the most influenced by the people we hang out with. Of course, the studies show that's who we hang out with the most, but I think it works tangentially too. And that means, like, if you move to a new area, you're going to be influenced by the shops you drive past. You're going to be influenced by what the homes around you look like. If you follow a maximalist on Instagram, you're going to likely start to like that aesthetic too. Or if you start following influencers, you're going to want to start buying the things that they buy. If your friends always want to go shopping, well, it's likely you've purchased things on those trips too. We are easily swayed by the people around us because as humans, we long to fit in. So I want you to carve out more space for intentionality in your life. Start following minimalists and financial experts who encourage you to save on Instagram instead of go out and spend and buy the newest things. Ask your friends to go out for coffee instead of shopping next time. And just make small little changes in your life, and it will really start to impact your everyday life as well. But now it's your turn. I would love to know your thoughts on this episode. Is there something that stuck out for you? Any aha moments you had? Well, please let me know by commenting on this post on Instagram or sharing the episode in a story or by sending me a DM. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free on Instagram. Or you can come over to the Wannabe Minimalist family group on Facebook and you can share with the community there. There will be a discussion thread for this episode and we would love to chat with you in the comments. You can also leave a rating and a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts, but Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube are the biggest and help the show the most. And feel free to share this episode with a friend as well. Of course, special thanks to Joshua for joining us on the show today and sharing his insights on minimalism. Remember, you can get more detailed show notes and all of the links by heading over to wannabeclutterfree.com/242. Again, wannabeclutterfree.com/242 to find out more about Joshua. And as always, thank you so much for joining me today too. And with that, I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you back here next week for a solo show. Until next time, take care, keep things simple, be open to letting more go, and remember, I believe in you. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wannabe Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.